Thank you, Felice. Thank you, Summer, and welcome everybody. My name is Vrinda Mathur. I'm so excited to be here with this group and looking forward to supporting how we can create a dynamic process to inspire and sustain community action through the lens of the arts and design. A little peek into my world of design. Since I was 14 years old, I think I knew I'd be a designer. But back then, maybe I quite didn't know what a designer truly did. I studied product design with a focus on tabletop accessories, furniture, lighting back in 2013 from the National Institute of Fashion Technology in India. And pretty early on in my career, began my entrepreneurial journey with an agency called Studio Wood that I co-founded with fellow designers and friends. Things did shift for me in 2020 when I decided to take an academic leap of faith. I moved cities, continents, actually. That's what brought me to the US when I did my master's in industrial design at RISD to really understand where design can go next, where I can go next with the skill set that I had so far. And today I straddle both these worlds as a designer, storyteller, strategist. There's many hyphens in the way I introduce myself. So let's take a visual peek into the past decade of my work. These are some snippets from furniture and interior design that I did as part of Studio Wood from 2014 to 2020. And when asked about what it is that I do, the answer was simple and often reciprocated with raised eyebrows because I was 23. And I was like, I run this firm and we have, we collaborate with artisans, resin artists, woodworkers, metal artists, cane artists, and we, create these beautiful pieces of furniture. We create spaces, everything from restaurants to offices, residences, cafes, public spaces. So it's been a great learning curve. It was a very, very exciting time. And today I continue to be in my designer entrepreneurial era, but with a twist. My practice ranges from pieces in research, strategy, storytelling, and also continuing to design physical touch points that bring us closer to some of the biggest challenges we face as society today. And this shift really happened for me when I did my master's. My focus was more research intensive. It was more towards climate, its intersections with ecology, gender, displacement. How can we bring the community as a whole into these conversations, into some of these unknowns? And, these are just some snapshots of my work today. Towards the end of our chat, I will share my website and contact details so you can have a closer look. Now that we have a good group all in, I would like to share some community agreements with the group. We're also open to hearing some community agreements that you might want to add for today's practice here. And I can say one of them out loud, and I would encourage maybe a few volunteers to say the other ones out loud that you see here. So let's quickly peruse through these. I will start with the first one to make this a brave and safe space. Would anyone like to volunteer and read out the other agreements?
Take space if you need it.
Share the air. You know your stories best. Ask each other questions. Remain curious. Cultivate compassion and respect. Oops and ouch. And then do you want me to read what an oops and ouch is?
Sure, thank you so much.
Sure. So oops and ouch. If you said something you didn't mean and want to reiterate, say oops. If you heard something you didn't like, say ouch.
Thank you so much. And if there's more, happy to take in the group or in the chat, and we'll add them to our deck when we share it with the group later. But let's get into it with the right spirits. on today's agenda, we do have a few sets of tools that are open for everybody. We do have something called a Miro board where the deck that I'm sharing is also accessible. If anybody is familiar with Miro, they could go in, use sticky notes, use emojis, draw, write, however they want to explore the medium. But I also encourage that everybody has a scratch pad or sticky notes and pens, because we're going to get a little crafty and messy as we move on. I think we're doing well on time. I said 12:13-ish, the workshop begins. We then move into, let's see. We move into working in smaller groups or working independently, depending on, the size of the group we have today, to draft some intersectional diagrams. I will also move on and share a sample project and notes on how to design your process arc. And everyone will have time to create their unique versions, share notes, and inspire the group. Okay, so let's find our marks. The first intersection or the first exercise I would love to move in to with all of you is to think about a past or a current project, a recent conversation, an observation to help you realize this diagram. When I talk about intersections, I would like you to focus on the center of the diagram where you see you, your creative practice, your community, and then the black circles are further zooming in into the first intersection, that is your community and you, and then the second intersection, that is your creative practice and you. We have about 7 minutes to work on this, and there is also a free slide provided for anybody to kind of work on it that you will see on the Miro, but I'll move on to showing you the first intersection. This is what we will be working with today, and I encourage you to identify a challenge that you may have worked on in the past, or it is something that you're interested in tapping into, or just something you might be having a conversation with another community member and are passionate about at a personal level. When I say challenges broadly, I have diversified them into environmental, health, digital, educational, etc. So you have the option to either explore those or think about a challenge that that is outside of these categories that have been provided here. Any questions? I would love to address them just so we're clear on the exercise and everybody knows what the ask is. This is another version of the worksheet that is also available on the Miro. So you could either work with this or draw it on your own scratch pads and start thinking about things. If you feel like you're more comfortable with writing your thoughts down, then feel free to write it down. I think everybody's back. Give it a few seconds. Okay. Well, I hope that was a start of a warm-up, and you got to exchange some thoughts, maybe found similarities and challenges. I would love to, again, have some volunteers from the group share out first impressions, thoughts, how it went. Anybody would like to start us off, or the chat is open if you'd like to type your thoughts in the chat, but it's always nice to hear new voices. So let's keep that open for a couple minutes. Any group have any interesting insights?
I can just speak for our group, and I was with Candace and Jane and Cindy, And the issues that came up, we weren't exactly sure what our charge was, but we identified some challenges around the digital sphere and how it connected to us both, to all of us socially, the health of our families and students, and in conjunction with climate. Just sort of the ideas that digital world can connect us across the globe with our climate issues, but also the time demands that digital world takes from us to actually be present.
Right, right. Thank you so much for sharing. And just another point to clarify here was to get the conversation started, to just starting to identify, are there challenges, and what kind of community are we talking about? Are we talking about our family as community? Are we talking about our schools as community? Are we talking about maybe a place we volunteer at? So the community as a word is held pretty widely. And we're trying to find or locate our intersections. So I think you did a great job anyway, because you were able to identify different layers. I did see another hand raise. I think it was Lisa, but checking if anybody else wanted to share. We have a minute or so to hear another few voices. Oh, Luis, I see you. Thank you. Please go ahead.
I will also talk for our group. Our group was Alondra, Steve, Lexi, and Lisa. That we did understood the assignments, but we had a hard time pinning exactly what was our challenge or objective, saying like that. So we were just like talking about it, hearing each other out to see how we will approach it. But yeah, it was really insightful.
Thank you so much. And also because we have, we're taking 5 or 7 minutes to do this. So please do not try to put any pressure on yourselves. It's a start of a conversation, and you'll have access to these worksheets to maybe take it forward if it's something of interest. So I'm happy that we have some conversations going on, and I'll move to the next intersection, which is an interesting one and taps the sort of lines that blend between you and your creative practice. Your creative practice could range from performing arts to graphic design to poetry to writing to painting. And I'm sure this group is full of many other great skills. Simultaneously, think about or list down your intentions and objectives. For example, to empower, to educate, to bring voices together. Think of your intentions as a verb, and also consider things that you may want to add to your skill set, things that you're willing to learn. And this will help us create sort of, from this second intersection, almost another Venn diagram that brings your intention, your skill set, and your future into some responses. I'll keep this slide up so you're able to reference it, but we also have another worksheet on the Miro, but I'll have this up. Any questions before we go in? Because we have about 7 minutes to work on this as well. If you want, I'm happy to kind of give an example from my own practice here as well. So because I come from an industrial design background, and that in my work, I was able to show you that while the skill set ranges from furniture design to strategy to doing climate-based research, the things that changed or helped me evolve this was the intention to make the move and start working with communities so that I can bring that research closer to them. So those are the intention meets skill set example. And to learn, there's so much more that I want to do. I want to learn from all of you also. I want to learn from community members on how I can become a better facilitator, on how I can not bring in biases when I'm entering a community. So that's an example that I'd like to share with you. And we'll again go into breakout groups. This is something that maybe you'd like to do more at a personal level because all of your skill sets will be different. So let's try to tap this while we're in a group together, but doing it individually and then maybe having some exchanges. Yeah, I'm pausing here for questions, clarity.
Vrinda, I would love if you could give us a specific example related to one of the projects you shared, maybe talking about your creative practice and what the intentions and skill sets were for that specific project.
Sure. I can move forward. I do talk about it later on, but let's go to it. This is a project titled Hope Bodega, which was at this very interesting intersection of design and public health. I was approached or brought in by Mount Sinai Health Systems and the New York Community Engagement Alliance to design a storytelling event where we're able to foster conversations around mental health. So that's like the large ask or brief about the project. And the brief itself has its intentions pretty set. When I came in as a designer, a visual storyteller, my mind kind of moved to the association we make with an object and how sometimes we tend to go back to those objects for a sense of relief. These objects could be a photograph of a loved one. It could be a piece of jewelry from my grandmom's closet. It could be a poem. It could be a book. And then we encourage the community members to bring in all of these objects that they have leaned into in times of weakness, in times of challenges, and almost do a show and share of those objects. So I brought in sort of that physical touch point into stories of mental health. And the final piece of this project was to display all of those objects like a museum of hope, or a bodega of hope is what we ended up calling this project. I hope that helps and like brings more clarity, examples, and stirs some or stimulates the group for some ideas.
Thank you. That's super helpful.
Of course, thank you. And maybe we can jump in now. Welcome back, trickling in. Well, thank you again for your collaboration on this. In the interest of time, we'll ask a few questions on insights and your learnings and thoughts about this second intersection in the chat. And we'll slowly move on to our next processes. We'll also now, for the remainder of our time together, keep it as one large group, and then we'll be able to have more conversations. Of course, you can reconnect with the lovely people you've met in your subgroups at any time after this. So moving into a designer's process arc. Now, some of this information that I'm sharing will be a little bit denser or academic. I wanted to ask also in the chat or raise of hands if the group is familiar with the double diamond framework or design thinking processes in general. I'm seeing no's. That's great. We have something new to be excited about and hopefully help in our processes. But a great blend of tools and frameworks that I've been able to include in my process is something known as a double diamond that you'll see in these two large orange diamonds. It essentially helps one think through broad ideas and how to distill them through this process of diverging and converging. So how do we diverge all of these ideas, all of these challenges first at a high level? And then how do we begin to distill them to form this diamond? Coupled with the 4 Ds of the design thinking process that starts with discovering, defining, developing, and designing, it allows you to move from identifying the challenge to defining the problem developing ideas and interventions, and finally designing solutions. Design here is used more broadly to represent movement, to represent a verb, to represent a process, and not necessarily design as industrial design, graphic design, fashion design, or architecture, for example. So think of it as a process, a sort of chain reaction, but also note that this chain reaction is never linear. We go through a lot of ups and downs and reiterations and coming back to the first good solution, and before we move forward to what is finally brought into the communities or into the design interventions. The concentric circles here also represent the many layers and underpinnings in each phase. For example, when we're in the discovery phase, we're simultaneously also getting to know our community. We're asking questions. We're identifying where there are gaps. So it can be as unique to you and the challenge. It can be as dense, as light. So it really depends on how one approaches their independent process arcs. This, again, is an example of how I have worked with it in the past, but is not the norm in any sense. I did share the Hopodega process briefly already, so I'll move into talking about the process here quickly. And it also is still derived from the double diamond. It is derived from the 4Ds, but you don't see the 4Ds anywhere. We kind of move to this question of how do we make efforts and take the right steps to co-create community programs? What does it take for a designer who might be an outsider to the community to come in, interface, and feel like a part of the community and is able to co-create and co-facilitate? And some of those examples for me, or some of those steps for me, included immersion. So getting to know the community, visiting them, meeting them at the farmers market, just having light interactions. And in some of my projects, language was a big barrier because I was working with communities that were speaking Spanish, they were speaking Wolof, Arabic. It was a whole mix. So how do you overcome that, or how do you make yourself part of the community despite the language barriers? What kind of observations are you making? Are you giving yourself a chance to step back and look at the bigger picture? How much of the facilitation versus co-facilitation are you open to? Do members have the agency to co-learn with you and start facilitating groups on their own? How do you gather and distill the information? And then finally move into design. And again, like I said, design is a verb. It could mean anything. With this, we move on to our final exciting exercise. We have time to flesh this out independently, but also share thoughts and with the group. So we won't be moving into breakout rooms, but take this time to derive your own process arc. Also revisit the two intersectional diagrams you worked on. So the intersection between you and your community, the intersection between you and practice. Questions to think about or ask yourself. What does it take for me to successfully move from challenge discovery to delivering a robust intervention? How do I fill the gap? The little scribbles here, again, kind of show you that it's not a linear process. You're going up, coming down, moving through, making a lot of twists and turns and thinking about your process. So let's take the next 5 minutes to scribble. So don't think of it as this is my final process, but try to chart out your unique creative way of how you might approach this from point A to point B. And yeah, we can do a 5-minute timer or something, or just have a share out after 5 minutes. or also any questions about this exercise in the chat or out loud. Okay, how are we feeling? Comfortable to share some thoughts, questions, ideas, aha moments? That's always a good one. But we now have some time to hear about your process arcs or your approach to the process arcs.
I'll share.
Sure.
So one thing that came up for me was around the challenge was, do I really know this is a challenge for the community, or is it just a challenge for me? And so thinking about your diagram where the first circle was immerse, I was thinking, oh, I still have some work to do around understanding the community. And like, I don't know, I guess there was a part of me that thought I was going to come in and solve this challenge versus this is actually something that we're going to co-create. And so that was an aha moment for me.
Great. That's a good one. That's always something that takes me back to the drawing board. Any other thoughts, questions, even difficulties, maybe? Yes, please, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I just realized sometimes I don't know where this would fit in with the original diamonds. I think maybe in the defining or the developing, somewhere in there, just that gestational process of like all the different tendrils that come out as possible solutions, and sort of and how not to get lost there, like how to move beyond just the gestation to trying something that then you work on and ultimately needs to be changed. So like the spaces in between for change, refinement, I think you've defined, but maybe not refine, develop, refine, gestate, all those things that happen in my process a lot.
Great point. And I think that happens somewhere between define and develop in these many concentric circles that you see around develop. And one way that I found to be useful in my independent practice is doing very low fidelity tests, low fidelity samples of what can I show to the community to get a response before I create this huge like workshop or exhibition for them. So that testing, prototyping, iteration is a helpful part of distilling the many, many wonderful ideas. But thank you for sharing. I think we have time for one more before we have to go.
I actually have a question, Vrinda.
Yes,
Sorry, excuse me. I know that you said with the Hulk Bodega that you were approached. So how would, like, for example, I have a project at this point been years in the making, but I would need to approach a community rather than have them approach me as a storyteller. How would I be able to, I guess, have the challenge discovery, but then do something that would be like a partner pitch, because I'm looking to partner with that community? How would I be able to do that if they're not already reaching out?
great question. And I think that's maybe part of a little bit of the strategy process that you want to use, because sometimes you may have a few organizations, community organizations that can be the catalyst. If you're not able to individually enter a community, is there an organization? Is there or is there other set of volunteers that you could approach that can help you get introduced to the community? Because again, it's a constant battle that how do I enter this space? I want to do this really interesting thing. I know there is scope, but I don't know if the other person wants it. So I think just spreading your network far and wide is the first thing that comes to mind for me. And maybe again, like increased interactions and immersion with the community. And in what way are you able to meet them more often? Are they doing any festivals, any programs? Is there a farmers market? Can you yourself maybe start as a volunteer? So there's familiarity and there's engagement.
Thank you, Brenda.
Of course. So I'd like to thank everybody for their active participation today. Thank you again to Felice and Summer for really supporting us through the design of this workshop and for bringing us all here today. Thank you for your time and your intention. And I hope you are able to take something back. I see a hand raised. Was that intentional? Yes, please.
I only want to thank you that I'm not ready to share what I thought about right now, but you gave me a lot of things to think about and to process. So thank you.
Of course. Thank you. I'm glad to hear that.